Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us while we have these outdoor press conferences. We're doing some necessary upgrades to our media room. So this may not be the last one. We may do one more. Is that right? Okay. So good afternoon to everybody here. And I would like to thank everybody who's joining us on Facebook. I have a couple of important announcements to make. The first one is I would like to announce the guilty verdict of a sexual predator who was a teacher, a trusted adult, and who violated children who were in his classroom. The individual's name is Manuel Gavina, G-A-V-I-N-A. He is a former teacher at Capital Elementary School, and because of the convictions, he's facing up to 70 years in prison for preying on numerous girls, all under the age of 16. Specifically, there were 7 victims, and we will be releasing a press release shortly to give you more information. But this man took advantage of children that he had access to, and this was a very challenging case, but I want to thank the team in my office that was responsible for the prosecution of this case. They were relentless, and they ensured that there was justice for the victims. I'd also like to announce that we have filed a direct complaint on defendant Jose Figueroa Lizarraga. He is an Arizona Department of Corrections officer who back in September was arrested for 1 count of unlawful sexual conduct with a person in custody. That is a Class 5 felony. Felonies in Arizona are ranked from 1 to 6, 6 being the least serious. So this is a Class 5. And I want to take the time to explain about the process that this office takes when filing charges on a defendant, because there have been some erroneous reports regarding this case saying that we, quote, let the case lapse because we didn't file official charges. This case was submitted to our office on October the 9th, almost 2 weeks after his arrest. We do not and cannot file charges until we receive a submittal from law enforcement. Once received, the case was reviewed, and the case against Mr. Figueroa was charged on October 24th. And I'll insert here the caution that charges are not evidence and people are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The case, the fact that we filed the case, hit the public-facing document yesterday, October 31st. We had been questioned about the status of this case, and oftentimes you will hear us say that the case is under review. Some of that is based on the law, and some of that is we do that as a courtesy, waiting until the individual has been served in the case of a direct complaint. So I bring this to your attention because when reporting a case, you know, these details matter. The words used matter. And this is not about ego, this is not about the profile of the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, but there are victims watching. And at any given time, this office is dealing with literally thousands of victims. And when they see a report that we dropped the ball when we didn't, or that we did something irresponsible when we didn't, we'll take our lumps when we did, but they lose faith, and that's something that we have to overcome, and that's just not fair to them. So I would caution people to do that. You know, I know this is a hard job. You guys are reporting on so many different subject matters. I was a reporter once too. I understand. I had to know everything from water law to criminal law to every other area that's covered by the legislature. So I get it's hard, but words do matter. So, based on that, I'll move on. I have one final announcement to add, and that is pertaining to fentanyl. My office is partnering with the City of Avondale to put together another fentanyl forum. The date of that will be November 14th, 2023. Starts at 6 p.m. and it goes 1 hour. It will be at the Avondale City Hall, so thanks to Avondale for stepping up and co-hosting with us. And we would ask anybody from the community that wants to join us, please join us. You don't have to live in Avondale. This would be a good opportunity for parents to educate themselves. It would be a good opportunity for kids to learn about fentanyl. This is an ignorance we cannot afford kids to have. And it would be also good for teachers, grandparents, anybody who wants to learn about fentanyl. So with that, I'll take your questions.
Can we start with the ADC officer case?
Yes.
Seeing that you brought that up, are you saying that the direct complaint was written or there was an indictment in that case before yesterday, and that it took a while to serve him, and that's why the office wasn't able to talk about it? Because I think that's important to know.
The case was charged on October 24th, which was last Tuesday.
And then it hits.
He was served, I believe, yesterday, which is why it became public facing yesterday.
And is there a reason why there isn't some better coordination between the law enforcement agencies and the county attorney's office on these kinds of sex abuse, sex charge cases, that after an arrest is made, that the charge doesn't come fairly quickly and the paperwork's sent fairly quickly?
Well, I don't think there's a lack of coordination at all. There could be a myriad of reasons why law enforcement doesn't submit it right away. They may make the initial arrest and then realize that they need additional information before they submit it to us. It could be that they're waiting to talk to a witness who they haven't been able to locate or haven't been able to schedule. I mean, the list goes on as to reasons why that is. But the point is, it was submitted to us. We did review it. We did file charges. And I think it's important for the media to understand, in the case of an indictment, the law prohibits us from disclosing the existence of the indictment until the person is served. We extended that courtesy in this case, even though we were dealing with a direct complaint, to the defendant. We waited till he was served, and that's when it became public facing on the court website. And there are a lot of reasons why you want to do that. You may, and I'm speaking generically, I'm not speaking about this case, you may be concerned that the individual is going to flee. You may want him to have an opportunity to self-surrender. You know, there are a lot of reasons. So
let me ask you one other question from the reporter who did the story I think you're discussing. Why wouldn't your office provide any response to our questions prior to now, when you're calling our report erroneous?
Well, I think that we provided what we could provide at that point. You know, I'm constrained ethically, and everybody in this office then under me is constrained ethically from talking about giving out certain information. And I mean, you've heard it, and I'm sure to your frustration over the year and a half I've been in office that I've said I can't talk about it. It's an ongoing case. So there's just a lot that goes into it. It may be something that I know about what's going on with the investigation that we choose not to say anything. But the fact that it was under review was communicated. And so there was no failure to file. It was filed a week and a day ago.
About another case that's very pressing right now has to do with Spring, Thibodeau, and Brooke Hale. Are you aware whether or not the governor's warrant has been issued to extradite them to Arizona?
We don't have a submission yet on that case, so once we get the submission and review for charges, we'll pursue it at that point.
But you already have charged them with custodial interference.
But we don't have. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong line. I apologize, Melissa.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's on me. See, I admit my faults, right? Okay. So they are held on a bond. The extradition, is in process. It usually takes about 30 days if the waiver is in place. However, I do understand that there are some transportation issues going on in that area of the world based on the weather. So normally we could expect about 30 days.
Let me ask you about another case,
Okay.
if you don't mind me getting through all mine, and then we'll the Alicia Navarro case.
Yeah.
As we now know, Alicia and her mother have been reunited. She is out of Montana now.
Yeah.
How does that change the dynamic in her original disappearance case? Has she been talking to authorities more in depth about what went down back in 2019, and has that been helpful?
Well, I would, since this is at the investigation stage, I would refer you to either the Montana authorities or Glendale PD. At the last press conference I did 2 weeks ago, I had talked to Chief Briggs from Glendale PD, and I know from his perspective from that time that the investigation's ongoing. We obviously don't have a submittal yet on that, but I'm glad she's safe, and wow, what an incredible ordeal. So I know that Glendale's taking it very seriously, and I'm sure Montana is as well.
The last thing I wanted to ask you about is the Queen Creek. Preston Lord was assaulted at a Halloween party over the weekend. A teenager has now died. Has there been any arrests, or are you hearing or working with Queen Creek Police to affect some kind of justice in this case for his family?
Yeah, anytime that there's a homicide in Maricopa County, my office is working with and in touch with the police pretty much from the get-go, and this case is no exception. We don't have a submittal yet. Obviously, as you can imagine from the facts that have come out so far, there's a lot of people to talk to, and so when we get a submittal, we'll review it quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Jackie with Telemundo Arizona. I wanted to ask you about this case that you just mentioned about a teacher, Manuel Gavina,
Yes.
From Capital Elementary. You mentioned at least 7 victims.
Yes.
We would like to know, since when was the first report of abuse, and what were the accusations made from these victims? If you can specify like the ages. I know sometimes that is private information to protect the victims, but at least give us an idea of how young are these victims.
Yeah, so the victims first came forward to the school authorities, I believe, back in 2017. Phoenix Police were first notified of the accusations in December of 2019, when more victims came forward. Each count is a dangerous crime against children, is a Class 3 felony. All the victims are under the age of 16. And I think the press release may have a little bit more information to glean from that.
Now, this person is already in custody, I understand. What was the evidence found? If you can elaborate on that. Sexual abuse, are we talking about touching them inappropriately, child pornography? Give us an idea, I guess, of what was found on him.
Well, oftentimes you don't have any sort of scientific or forensic type evidence. In this type of case, they were hands-on offenses. Some were committed in the classroom.
Is there a possibility that there are other employees in the classroom that might be linked to something like this, teacher aide or something like that?
I don't have any information that that's the case, but what I can tell you is this, that what the research, I'm going to go into my former sex crimes prosecutor mode here. What the research tells us is that many sex offenders will abuse children with others present or nearby. We can give you the research on that if you want it. In fact, more than half of them will do it with other adults. Some will do it with other children. Some will do it with both children and adults. And I think the stat is that of those who have not done it, 63% felt like they would progress to that point. And there are a myriad of reasons for that. That if you ever want to talk about that, we can go into. But it's not uncommon, and that doesn't mean that the other people in the room necessarily perceived it or that they're colluding with them.
Do you guys believe there's other victims besides the 7 that you mentioned for this particular case?
That would be speculation on my part.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Sivan from 12 News. On Tony Navarrete's mistrial, how does your office plan to proceed with that case, and are there options to refile charges or new charges?
Actually, we don't have to refile charges in the case of a hung jury. The indictment stands, and we're going to move forward with the case.
And then regarding Ali Osman, the city of Phoenix is expected to approve a multi-million-dollar settlement with the family. Is your office still considering the case against any of the officers involved, and did the office identify any potential legal or other violations in the officers' actions?
No, we did a thorough review of that, and I actually did a press conference on that several months ago where I walked the media and anybody watching through the steps that we considered legally as to whether charges should be filed, made the decision that charges were not appropriate in this case. But, you know, I would remind people that there are three different kind of coexisting tracks on cases of this nature. One is whether criminal charges are appropriate, and that's the only thing my office deals with. The second is whether there is a policy violation, and that's an administrative matter handled by the department. And then the third is the civil aspect of it for a lawsuit, and that's a completely different standard than we apply in the criminal justice system. So they're different. One doesn't necessarily inform the others as to how they should act, and my understanding is that's what's happened here.
And then last question, regarding the two dropped cases against Alfredo Gutierrez accused of killing Lee Rice, why did the county attorney's office resubmit charges in 2023 without contact with the key witnesses? What changed between the time the charges were resubmitted and the county attorney's office determined to drop the case? And what options are available for the victim's family?
Well, as you know, we still picking up this very loud plane. I was recording something the other day, and we were interrupted by the flyover right before the baseball game. As you know, in the homicide case, there is no statute of limitations. So the case remains available to us to file charges. The reason we dismissed it originally, as I'm sure you also know, is that the key witness was deported despite our efforts. And then when we had information, a reasonable belief that we could get that individual back, we refiled. Now, that turned out not to be the case. And despite our best efforts during the pendency of the second case, we still could not get that individual back. But again, there is no statute of limitations, so this is not a done deal by any means.
Thank you.
Hello, just following up on my colleague's question there, can you give us any more specifics on the Navarrete case? Like, are you definitely going to pursue another trial?
Well, the case will go forward. How that resolves, I can't predict.
Okay, that's my question. You can't define going forward any further? You can't give us, like, what are potential options at this point when you're in this position?
We're not dismissing.
Not dismissing, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's on a trial track. It will be on a trial track.
Okay.
If something else happens in the interim, I can't predict that.
What was your assessment of the outcome? You know, what's your...
You know, having tried these cases, they're hard. You know, one of the very first lessons that I learned when I started in sex crimes back in, 1996, was if you think about having to talk about your last consensual sexual experience, nobody wants to do that. And as adults, it's a given in most cases. But when you're talking about kids having to take the stand and talk about something that happened to them in front of a group of strangers and the person who allegedly did this, think of how hard that is. And it's what makes these cases really difficult. And you know, it's not uncommon for cases to hang, and we still go forward unless there's a reason not to.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay. Thanks, everybody.